everyone, and welcome to another Knitty Heather Scrap. This is the series on my channel where I explore shorter subjects in the fiber world, and it's been a long time since I've recorded one, so I thought I would share what I am working on for all my Scrappy projects, give you a little bit of a Scrappy project update. I have a lot of Scrappy projects on the hooks and needles, but they do all serve a different purpose. Some I've made a lot of progress on, some I've barely touched since last time I talked about them, but I thought I'd go ahead and talk about them all today and then move up my progress keepers so I know how much progress I have made until I talk about them next time. I've been trying to spend a little bit of time every day working on one Scrappy project or another, usually before I go to bed. And I definitely have been participating in Kay the Crazy Sock Lady's Scrappy Sunday, where I try to take a little bit of time on Sundays to give my Scrappy projects a little bit of love. If you would like to follow me, I am at Knitty Heather on Instagram, and I do usually try to post pictures of whatever Scrappy project I am working on Sundays. There is a lot to tell you about, hopefully a little bit of inspiration. So sit back, relax, and enjoy a little chat about all of my Scrappy projects. I absolutely love using leftovers or mini skeins for Scrappy projects. Let me know in the comments down below, what Scrappy projects are you knitting or crocheting? I always love new ideas for patterns. The first Scrappy project I would like to tell you about is one that has gotten quite a bit of love since I showed it last, and it is my granny stripe blanket. I have it in this really cute large drawstring bag from LaLa. A year or two ago, I belonged to a club where I got a new bag like this every month for, I think it was a 3-month club. So you'll see quite a few LaLa bags for my Scrappy projects just because they're nice and big and they fit them really well so far. Here is my granny stripe blanket. I am using the pattern by Lucy of Addi 24, and all I'm using on this so far are my monthly minis from Crystal Sky's Hand Dyed. She does a monthly mystery mini club where you get 5 20-gram minis. I started with some that were inspired by brown, that all had kind of a brown tone. And then I moved into her Oxblood Red set, and now I am in her purple set. Here is the mini I am working through right now. I've got just a couple grams left to add into the blanket. And then here is the next mini I am planning on using. Really pretty. And I love how they are working together. They're sort of transitioning. You can see especially a lot of those red tones and now the purple tones. It's just a really fun blanket, and I do have a lot of her mini sets that I need to still add to this. So hopefully I can get most of this blanket done just with those mini sets I get from her every month. I am using a size E 3.5 millimeter crochet hook from my Knit Picks set. And this is one that I try to spend maybe about 10 minutes a day just adding a little bit every day, and I can get through about 1 mini a week doing that. So that's sort of my goal, just to make steady progress on this and add 1 20-gram mini every week to this blanket. I cast on 360 stitches, so this is going to be very wide. It does fit across a king-size bed, and I can do just about 2 rows with each color, and I think that's looking really nice so far. Once again, this is the Granny Stripe Blanket by Lucy of Addi 24. And in this case, so far, I am using all minis from Crystal Sky's Hand Dyed. My next project is the other one that I have worked on the most, and it is also my longest running and largest Scrappy project. This is my Granny Ripple Blanket. I am using the Granny Ripple pattern by Stacy Perry of Very Pink Knits, and right now I am working through, starting right at this yellow section, I am working through the seasonal advent minis from Clark and Elle. I have incorporated all of the spring minis, and now I am working through the summer colors She does these seasonal mini sets where you open one 20-gram mini every week throughout a season. And for this project, I am using all DK or worsted weight yarn, kind of some of my thicker yarn. So I ordered her minis on worsted and have really been enjoying incorporating one of those minis every week as well. The Granny Ripple blanket is very much like the Granny Stripe, but you just kind of increase and then skip over certain clusters in order to create the little ripples. I have worked since this State of Maine Progress Keeper from Jennifer of Bump on a Hill since last I talked about this project. So I've added quite a few more inches, and like I said, I've been working on this for a few minutes every day, usually right before bedtime, and it's just kind of a nice relaxing way to end my day. I easily get a mini in every week with this. The worsted weight yarn does crochet up quite a bit faster. This and the Granny Stripe blanket are both really great options for a scrappy project because you just keep adding clusters through the holes that you create and you don't have to fiddle with getting through a particular stitch. The holes are nice and easy and you don't have to seam things together like you do with a granny square blanket. I am using a size H 5mm hook on this one, also from my Knit Picks crochet hook set. I started at the bottom with this white, and here it is to kind of give you a concept of how long. It is probably about half as long as I would like it, so I definitely will continue to incorporate the rest of the spring minis. I also have her fall minis on order, and then I have a bunch of extra DK and worsted scraps that I will add into this as time permits as well. But I'm loving just working with the Clark & L. Her worsted base is really, really nice. This is the Crocheted Granny Ripple Blanket by Stacey Perry of Very Pink Knits. Right now I am using worsted minis from Clark & L. Next, I'd like to tell you about one of my projects that I haven't worked on quite as much. I have it in another of my Delicue bags, another pretty floral pattern. And it is my Crochet Corner to Corner blanket. This is the Crochet Corner to Corner blanket by Catherine J. Watson. It is also the pattern that Kay the Crazy Sock Lady has used for her Crochet Corner to Corner blanket. And there's an excellent video tutorial for this one. I'll try to link this and tutorials for all my other scrappy projects in the description box below. There's lots of good tutorials out there for most of these. So I think I was at this Airplane Progress Keeper when I did my Scrappy Makes Me Happy first Scrappy video. I'll link that in the description below. I put this 2021 Progress Keeper in at the beginning of the year, so I've really done maybe barely a row on this since 2021 began. So I definitely want to work on this a little bit more. I started with some self-striping because I thought that would give some nice color changes, so I wouldn't have a huge block of color when it's really narrow in the corner. And then I transitioned into a magic knot ball that I made from my leftovers from the Lollipop Girl Yarns Christmas in July 2020 Advent. I put all my leftovers in a magic knot ball, added those, and now I have just started using a magic knot ball I made from my leftover Sexy Christmas mini set from Loco that I made some mini Christmas ornaments with. So it's going to go through different shades of pink. There is like a blue and a lavender, and then into some greens. It was a very pretty fade kit. I think she'll probably put it back out at Christmas time again. So I've just begun adding that with this kind of dark pink. I plan to work through this whole magic knot ball and then probably add some more scraps in. I have been using a magic knot to add all my minis into all of my projects, by the way, and there are lots of great magic knot ball tutorials out there. I'll try to link a few in the description box below. So I need to make this a lot wider, and then I will stop increasing And then I'll probably kind of just do it straight for a while and then start decreasing. But this is another really fun pattern, and the thing I loved about this is that I didn't have to chain 360 stitches to get it started. I could just start at the corner with one little cluster. So I don't really have any method for this one. I'm just adding in colors, trying to make sure they're broken up a little bit. And I have lots of leftover scraps to add to this when I'm done with this magic knot ball. This is fingering weight yarn, and I am also using my size E 3.25 crochet hook from my Knit Pick set on this one. I kind of trade back and forth between my crochet corner to corner and my granny stripe blanket with this hook. And I just save my stitch on a little light bulb stitch marker. This is the Crochet Corner to Corner Blanket by Catherine J. Watson, knit up in completely random scraps. Right now I am working through a magic knot ball out of Loco yarn. Next is my Cozy Memory Blanket. The pattern I am following is called The Coziest Memory by Kemper Ray. I have it in the last bag from Q I got from that club. I showed this semi-recently on the podcast. Here it is. So you're basically making a mitered square with scraps of leftover. In my case, I am using fingering weight on this, and I decided to make it a little bit wider. So I am actually starting to add strips a little bit wider. These squares are all from my Legacy Fiber Arts Christmas 2020 Advent that I have left over. Right now I just started a square in this pretty pink color. I'm adding width this direction. I think I'll do 8 more squares wide. And I've also been adding on top as well some of my Desert Vista Dye Works and Yarnable and Cozy Knitter yarn. So I'm kind of adding in 2 different directions right now, which is fine. This does not use up all of my leftovers. So I will make a square with basically everything that I have used in a project. I do want to use only yarn that I have actually used in a project on this. And then I put it in a little basket to add to a different, either my corner to corner, or I might start another granny stripe blanket someday to add the rest of these leftovers. So I haven't made a ton of progress on this, but I do have a better game plan, I feel like, as far as what minis I want to use in these different sections to get it to the size I want. I am using ChiaoGoo size 2, 2.75 millimeters, 16-inch needles for this. And I am trying to add these squares semi-randomly, at least not putting 2 colors that are too close next to each other. I like to have a little bit of contrast. And I try to mark the right side of the square that I'm currently working on with a progress keeper. This is The Coziest Memory by Kemper Ray, knit up in random fingering weight scraps. Next, I'd like to tell you about my Bits and Bobs blanket. This is a pattern by K.F. Jones, and I have it in my If I'm Sitting, I'm Knitting bag from A Little Knitty, one of my local yarn stores here in Auburn. Here it is. This is one that I have not worked on very much at all since I talked about it last, but it is a really fun pattern. And you hold 2 strands of fingering weight yarn held together. One that is Scrappy, I have a magic knot ball. made from some of my Row 1 yarn minis when I used to belong to the Row 1 yarn club. And then a solid color. As you can see, I'm just about done with this first ball of yarn. This is Dove Heather by Knit Picks in their Stroll Fingering. So you hold 2 strands together for kind of a really nice effect. The solid color really kind of keeps it cohesive, but it's really fun having different colors come through. I have almost knit through this green color from this cake. I made a magic knot ball cake and I just kind of put colors together that were contrasting, that did not match too closely next to each other. This is all the way back from November 2019. I've got lots and lots of months of Row 1 yarn to add to this. I do want to keep adding to this a little bit more consistently, maybe even a row or just half a row on a somewhat regular basis. I'll try to get better about doing more on this so that I have more progress to show you. But this is another really great scrappy idea. All of the Row 1 yarn minis are 10 grams. So that kind of gives you an idea of how thick each stripe is with 10 grams. And I like for this one that all of the stripes should be consistent with the same amount of yarn. And it's nice that I'll be able to use all of the minis up. I am using a ChiaoGoo red lace size 6 needle for this project. It is a fixed needle. And I chose it because of the nice thick cord. I feel like it would hold the weight of this blanket as it grows really nicely. One time I was working on a blanket with some cheaper needles and they totally snapped with the weight and the blanket was ruined. So I never want that to happen again. I have a little stitch marker from A Good Yarn Sarasota that's marking about the halfway point, just so that when I am working on this, I kind of know when I'm about halfway through a row. And the biggest tip I can give you if you ever try to knit this blanket is to make sure that you are actually knitting with both strands of yarn. Sometimes I notice I accidentally just knit through one of the loops and I have to go back and fix that. This is the Bits and Bobs blanket by KF Jones, knit up in Knit Picks Stroll Fingering and minis from Row 1 yarn. Next are 2 newer scrappy cast-ons that I am working from the leftovers of my Loco Fade Advent from Christmas 2020. First, I am adding them into this striped cowl. It's just a plain stockinette loop cowl. I'm using a size 5 needle from my Knitter's Pride Zing interchangeable set, 16 inches. I do have a cute little flower stitch marker for the beginning of the round and to kind of mark my progress, both from Bump on a Hill on Etsy. I am only on my 3rd color from Loco's Fade Advent and I am doing 12 rounds. I cast on 90 stitches and I'm doing 12 rounds of each color. So it won't use up all of the scraps, but it'll help me make the cowl the length that I would like it. I started with a provisional cast on and then I will seam it together once I have the giant tube all knit up with the Kitchener stitch. This is a very relaxing, just plain stockinette knit. I don't get around to it very often, which is why I haven't incorporated too many colors on this yet, but hopefully I'll be able to make more progress on it. But I love the idea to use this for kind of a loopy cowl because there are going to be so many beautiful colors that were in this Fade Advent that it should go with just about everything. I have it in my cabled bag from Mrs. Brown's Bags. Once I am done adding the 12 rounds to that cowl, I am adding these colors into my first pair of Scrappy socks. I am using my Madame Tremaine and Cruella Progress Keepers from Fangirl Fibers. And these I only have the first 2 stripes on. I'm working on them in tandem using my Knitter's Pride Carbons 32-inch needles for Magic Loop. So once I am done with the 3rd color on the cowl, I will add 5 rounds. I am doing 5 rounds of each color. I did the toe in this gray Cascade yarn sock yarn. And I will probably do an afterthought heel in that color as well. So just the beginnings of both of these projects, but I'm really excited to keep adding to them when I can. These are in another Mrs. Brown's bag. These are 2 projects I am working on with the leftover Hue Loco Fade Advent from Christmas 2020. This is a stripy Scrappy cowl and Scrappy socks. The last Scrappy project I am working on is a granny square blanket. I have it in a different LaLa bag that says, shh, I'm counting. This is the granny square blanket pattern by Stacey Perry of Very Pink Knits, and it is part of her Crochet for Knitters series on her channel. And I've got 2 strips so far. I'm trying to use only leftovers for kind of my 3 monthly sock clubs. Desert Vista Dye Works, The Cozy Knitter, and Yarnable by Hypnotic Yarn. This top square is Bed Knobs and Broomsticks by Desert Vista Dye Works. And then these 2 are from the Cozy Knitter Christmas 2019 and 2020 24 stripe Advent skeins. So I'm kind of trying to make matching strips, and then I will sort of do them opposite like this. We'll see. I'm not quite sure how I want to put this together yet. I am trying to seam the squares together as I go, just so I don't have a whole bunch to do when I'm done. And I'm not quite sure how many squares wide I want to make this. I'll kind of have to do a little bit of trial and error as I work through some of the leftovers from these yarn dyers. I chose those 3 yarn dyers just because I do work with one of their skeins just about every month, and I tend to have a lot of extra leftovers from those particular dyers. And I think self-striping, the Cozy Knitter and Desert Vista Dye Works are both self-striping. So I think it kind of looks cool doing a granny square in self-striping yarn. In her pattern, Stacey does recommend you seam together in strips like this, and then the strips together like this to make a whole blanket. And so that is what I intend to do. I tried to just leave an extra long tail from the square I just finished, and then kind of seam it together to the last one on the strip. That's what I'm doing so far, and it's worked out nicely. My only worry with this project, I am enjoying working on it, but my only worry is that I don't have enough scraps and that this will be a really, really long-term project, which I guess is fine. Because the Cozy Knitter yarn is a lot plumper, I am using a smaller hook for that than I am for the Desert Vista Dye Works. For the Cozy Knitter, I am using a 3mm crochet hook. And then for the Desert Vista Dye Works and probably the Hypnotic Yarn, I haven't added any of my Yarnable from Hypnotic Yarn yet, but with that I will probably use this thicker size G 4mm hook. That just kind of helps them end up about the same size. You can certainly stretch the squares out a little bit with seaming, but I found that that kind of helps even them out just a little bit. So hopefully they'll all fit together really nicely. This is the beginnings of the Granny Square Blanket by Stacey Perry of Very Pink Knits in Desert Vista Dye Works, Cozy Knitter, and Yarnable leftovers. Before I sign off, I'd like to tell you a little bit about some dream scrappy knitting. Yes, I know I still have ideas of more scrappy projects, even though I'm already working on a lot. But I do have some leftovers from my Clark & Elle seasonal advent from 2020 in fingering weight. And what I think I would like to do with that is the Habitation Throw by Helen Stewart. I have little bags like this from all four seasons last year in 2020, and I think they would make the perfect habitation throw. It would be a really large one, but I have basically equal amounts of all of these minis, and I think it would just look really nice. Plus, I think it would be really easy to increase with the winter and spring minis, and then decrease with the summer and fall. There'd be a perfect halfway point between my spring and summer minis. If you haven't seen the Habitation Throw by Helen Stewart, I encourage you to check it out. It is another very beautiful scrappy blanket. The other scrappy project that's really got my attention is a newer one. It is another pattern by K.F. Jones, and it is called the Jelly Roll Blanket, and it looks so much fun. I don't really know any details. I have not purchased the pattern yet, but I will very soon. But I think it's basically little strips of garter stitch that you seam together, going back and forth. It's another pattern that you can use up all of your leftovers and make a really cool design. You could use up the whole thing or just do a certain number of rows per color to make it a little more even. The possibilities are endless, and there's some really cool projects showing up on Ravelry. Check out the Jelly Roll Blanket by K.F. Jones. Well, that is it. Those are all of my scrappy projects I have on the hooks and needles. Let me know, am I crazy? Is this way too many scrappy projects, or do you have a lot that you are working on as well? Like I said, some of mine get a little bit more love than others, but I do try to make a little bit of progress on all of them when I can. Thank you so much for joining me in this little scrappy chat, and I hope it's inspired you to cast on or chain up or continue working on any scrappy projects. Once again, let me know in the comments below if you have any other ideas for scrappy projects. What do you like to do with your leftovers and mini skeins? I am such a huge fan of advents and minis and using up all the yarn that I possibly can, so I always love good scrappy project inspiration. Thank you again for spending a little bit of time with me. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And if you would like to follow me, I am at Knitty Heather on Instagram if you would like to see the progress I make on all my scrappy projects. Hopefully this will kind of help me keep accountable for posting on Scrappy Sundays what I have done that week. Until we talk next time, be well, be kind, and happy knitting and crocheting scrappy projects. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.